The future of DevOps, I said to my coworkers, I'm going to do a talk on the future of DevOps in 10 minutes, and they laughed at me. But I started with a question, a very simple question, which is, what does DevOps look like? And what does DevOps look like? So what I did was I typed DevOps into Google and clicked the image button. And one thing I noticed is that DevOps looks like a figure 8 sideways. Who's ever seen one of these diagrams of DevOps? It's figure 8 sideways, right? Everybody's got a different version of this diagram. And I think it's really interesting. I decided to kind of dig in and scope out a little bit better. What is this diagram? What does it really mean? You've got like your planning and your coding and your testing and all your different components around here, and then finally you deploy and you monitor, right? And everybody's got different words, but it's pretty much the same stuff. Some of the diagrams actually have tools connected to it. I think this one here is funny because they don't have any planning tools. It's kind of funny. That one over there has a lot of tools. This one's actually from my company. We're not innocent here at all. So what does this actually mean? And the one thing I really noticed is that, putting aside for a second that this is a figure 8, which is kind of weird, like why is it crossing over? I'm not really sure. The other thing I noticed is that the right to left flow of this thing, I mean, if it's a figure 8, it's supposed to be continuous, right? The right to left flow is always the same. It's always monitor leading to plan. And I really started to think about that because I think that there's a lot more we could be doing and will be doing in DevOps to get that rightward flow to where it's working and become more data-driven in our organizations. I think that many of us have, we've adopted continuous integration, we've adopted Git, maybe we're doing security scans on every commit, right? That's kind of like the holy grail. But still things get out to production and maybe there's some monitoring that's used for maintenance. Maybe once in a while generates a report that we look at when we're planning, but we don't really have a right to left flow at the same speed and of the same utility as the left to right flow. So as we approach the future of DevOps, I think there are a number of challenges that we all confront. One is that all companies are software companies. This is increasingly becoming true. Whether you're in transportation, you're in healthcare, you're in entertainment, it doesn't matter. You have a software development team, you have teams that are implementing and developing software, and that's becoming more and more widespread. And DevOps practices therefore become more widespread. Speed becomes more and more important as we go forward. Companies that used to release new software once every 6 months, then it was once a month, now it's once a day, and pretty soon it'll be every 10 minutes that they're releasing new versions of their software. And to be competitive in the world, you have to be fast with your software, but you also have to be secure, right? So there are more and more vulnerabilities, there are more and more risks, there are more and more threats across a whole range of different vectors that we have to be aware of. So we have to be fast, but also secure. And every single company in the world is trying to do this right now. These are some of the challenges that we're facing. And meanwhile, a lot of companies are still working in silos. They still have, dev over here and ops over here and security over here and executives that aren't listening to anybody. And so these groups that aren't really communicating with each other have to come together to have that fast process that's necessary to remain competitive in the modern world. So I started to think about, with all these challenges, what does the future of DevOps really look like? What is the future? And I think there are a few. Oh, this is my overwhelmed slide. Forgot about that one. Let's go. Yes. Started to think about the future of DevOps. I think there are 4 characteristics to the companies that are going to win at the DevOps game in the future. The first one is they're going to measure everything. You need to be collecting data on absolutely everything. Not just how much traffic, but how much traffic to every page, how much traffic to every button, how many people are rolling over buttons, how many people are using different devices, how long do people take before they interact, all the correlation between the usage of different features. All this data needs to be collected. And then once we're measuring everything, we need to start treating our applications and systems as many-headed beasts. What I mean by that is that you can no longer just release your application once a month or whatever it is. You actually have to treat each module or each feature as if it's its own application so that you can have those tight loops on every single module and feature. It actually is a many-headed beast. It's no longer just a single thing, a single creature. The third is we have to embrace failure and learn from it actively. So whenever there's a failure, we should be tracking that, and we should be learning from it, and we should be adapting our practices and processes to prevent that category of failure in the future. And finally, my favorite, we need to adopt right-to-left thinking. We need to take a look at that monitor-to-plan connection that's in those diagrams and actually figure out how we can flesh that out on a feature-by-feature, module-by-module basis so that we can deliver software that's secure and deliver it really, really quickly. So I started to theorize, what would a better diagram look like? What would a diagram that works for me look like? And it's by no means complete, but I started on it, and this is what I wanted to share with you, the future of DevOps. So first off, I'm assuming testing here. I'm assuming continuous integration. Those are solved problems, right? Instead, I'm going to focus on what's the cycle for an individual feature or an individual module, and how can that cycle be made as fast and as high quality as possible. So the first step is to build the minimal version of every feature, or make the minimal change in every feature. So this is actually much harder than it sounds. We do it at GitLab, and we're always catching ourselves and saying, no, wait, we just designed that awesome thing, but actually there's one little minimal version that we can be doing, one minimal change that we can be doing. We're always asking ourselves, what's the smallest thing that you can do that will actually add value to the product? Can you do it today? Can you do it this week? Always focused on the minimal change. So build a minimal version, then instrument for data collection. We need to be thinking about data collection not as an afterthought, but as a fundamental feature of everything that we build and develop. And that includes not only monitoring style data collection, but also human feedback. Can we make a questionnaire pop up? Can we ask people? Can we test some different versions of the text, whatever the thing is, to get the human feedback from that so the actual users can be telling us what works and what doesn't work. Then when we deploy, we need to control that deployment so that that feature doesn't just go out to everyone automatically. Rather, we're using canary deployments, we're using feature flags, we're using whatever mechanisms are available to us to control how that feature is released and control who gets to see it so that we're gathering feedback from a small group of people at first, and then as we gather more data, we can start to roll that out to more and more of our users. And this is, again, how we become a many-headed beast. You may find that your users are all having different experiences because they have different features turned on and off as you're running tests on each of them across your application. And then finally, plan the next iteration based on real-time data. So it can't be a report that goes to a team that does the analysis, that creates a chart, that shows it to marketing, that shows it to UX, that designs something that could take months for that data to come back. Instead, the team working on that feature needs to have access to that data in real time so that they can immediately start coding the next iteration of that feature and continue that loop as a tight loop around that individual feature. Take this and multiply it, so you iterate. Take this and multiply it by all the teams in your organization, and what you have is a highly competitive future version of a development team or a development organization. And so you have, yay, happiness, and the future of DevOps. So that's all I got. Thank you very much.